What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to
Time 3 car accessories from the USSR, preserved as untouched time capsules, made it to our retro test. Each of them would be a welcome gift for a car owner of the 70-80s and even early 90s. So, let's go. Radio receiver Ternava 302, 1990. The Soviet industry did not care much about the design of audio equipment and our radios and tape. Recorders of Bylina, Grodno, Zvezda, etc. Families were, to put it mildly, not very attractive in appearance even against the background of boring interiors of Moskviches, Jiguli and Volgas. But the radio receiver Ternava 302 was considered a real beauty. This product of the defense plant Mayaka from the Ukrainian Khmelnytsky was sometimes equipped with rear-wheel drive and front-wheel drive VAZ, and those who had a plug instead of a radio tried with all their might to buy Ternava, not the more widespread and cheaper Bylina. This unit was often called the most beautiful Soviet car radio, and not without reason. The fact is that most radios in those years, and they were exclusively analog, had a tuning scale covered with transparent plexiglass, on which ranges and frequencies were printed with fonts of different colors. It looked, to put it mildly, so bad. But Ternava 302 is made quite differently. The plastic covering the scale is darkened, tinted, and in the off state the range lines and numbers are practically invisible. But after clicking the volume knob, the scale lights up with cozy amber light, like in the tuner of a component home audio system. It looked amazing. Unfortunately, the developers didn't have enough imagination to illuminate the volume and tuning knobs, and even more so, the buttons for switching the ranges. Maybe they planned to, but when handing over the novelty to the admission committee, they considered it an unnecessary luxury and optimized it. Pluses, nice design, AHR function. When approaching a station while turning the tuning knob, the receiver itself grabs the frequency. Comfortable tuning, as many as 8 full turns of the knob for the entire scale stroke. Minuses, mono sound, absurd tuning logic. The frequency value on the scale grows from right to left, not vice versa, as it is usually accepted. No backlighting of knobs and buttons, virtually useless today. VHF band 66 to 74 MHz, rough assembly. Remote mass switch OMSHP, 1989. In times of total shortage of starter batteries, batteries were valued and protected. Every second motorist put a device for disconnecting the mass on his car, but the vast majority of disconnectors were mounted under the hood and required to open it before each trip, which sooner or later became a burden. However, a rather rare model of switch called OMSHP allowed to turn off the battery right from the cabin. OMSHP was produced by the Riga electromechanical plant, and its name stood for mass disconnector with shunt fuse. At first glance, the gadget was primitive. A switching box with 2 powerful long wires of starter cross-section coming from it was simply mounted in the passenger compartment, and the above-mentioned wires went under the hood through the engine panel. However, in fact, everything was not so primitive. First of all, switching on the battery mass was not done by a button or a rotary switch, but by a clever and even partly cute key, which was, in fact, a nickel-plated bolt with a ring, allowing you to hang it on a bunch of car keys. The bolt was screwed into a hole on the body of the OMSP and closed the contacts. This allowed to create some, albeit very weak and illusory, line of defense against theft, because until the thief finds the reason for the lack of mass and until the thief guesses to stick a simple Phillips screwdriver into the hole instead of a bolt, some time will pass. Secondly, this disconnector allowed to keep working capacity of parking light if it is necessary to leave the car stalled on the roadside for a long time, security alarm system, as well as the memory of radio stations in the tape recorder. At the time of OMSHP sales, however, the USSR did not yet have tape recorders with electronic station memory, but the first digital receivers that appeared suffered massively from loss of settings when de-energized. How did it happen that the mass was disconnected, but at the same time not disconnected? It is very simple. In parallel to the powerful power disconnector, in which the key screw was screwed in, there was a 5 ampere fuse in the OMSP. and through it the minus potential from the battery continued to flow to the car body even if the key is unscrewed. But what is this nonsense? You might ask. Yes, this configuration did not protect from battery discharge due to small current leaks. But it saved from a potential fire due to a fault in the wiring. Through a 5 ampere fuse nothing will heat up to ignition and a larger current will not pass, allowing you to simultaneously keep the alarm system or parking lights. Plus nobody prevented to take out the fuse. In this case, OMSHP turned into a regular remote mass switch with full disconnection. Pros: powerful and very reliable design, careful manufacturing, 2 different scenarios of use. Cons: no significant disadvantages. Mirror with clock and alarm clock. Rhythm: 1993 rear view mirror with built-in electronic clock. Hardly the most canonical car gadget for its time. It was produced with slight differences by various radio factories of the USSR under the brand names Electronics, Polza, Slavutich, RYTHN, etc. We came across a rim, manufactured in 1987 by the Venezia lamp factory Akchuba. The color range of the cases was quite wide. We got a mirror of wild coloring, not bad, however, suitable in style to cars with the body in the color eggplant. Differences in models were not big, but sometimes important. For example, mirrors, electronics were connected to the power grid with 2 wires, plus and minus. And they had a switch on the body that turned off the glowing indicator so as not to discharge the battery when the driver left the car, and of course the time countdown continued. The solution, it must be said, was idiotic, for it required from the driver an unnecessary action and the need to remember it. But the rhythm was realized in a very reasonable way. It was connected by 3 wires, constant plus, minus and plus from the ignition. In this version, the clock in the mirror always worked, and the indicator lighted up and went out when the key was turned. By the way, since earlier we were talking about mass switches, such mirrors did not work with them, because they required constant power supply to save time. But they were quite compatible with switches of OMSHP type. As an indicator in such mirrors, regardless of the model name, was used not an LED matrix, but a vacuum-luminescent indicator. This is the canonical warm lamp technique, which required specific supply voltages, anode and filament voltages, which the built-in converter made from onboard 12 volts. Anode voltage for a vacuum-luminescent indicator was 25 to 30 volts, and it was obtained from 12 volts by means of a diode capacitor multiplier. A typical problem of such a scheme in its Soviet version was poor quality capacitors of the multiplier, which dried up in a few years, with loss of capacitance and leakage growth. As a result, the clock digits in these mirrors became barely visible even in total darkness. The problem was easily solved by replacing 4 penny capacitors of 1 microfarad capacitance, and the digits became bright and clear. However, thousands of such mirrors were scrapped because their disappointed owners did not know about such nuances or did not own a soldering iron. Pros: built-in clock, good quality of view, panoramic profile of the glass, expanding the sector of view. Minuses: the time is reset at power failure, due to low-quality components reduces the brightness of the indicator, and for use in modern realities, most copies of retro mirrors require repair with a soldering iron. In conclusion, the unique Soviet accessories we've explored today, such as the tinted receiver, anti-theft bolt, and mirror with clock, not only showcase the ingenuity of their time but also reflect the cultural and practical needs of the era. These items, often overlooked, offer a fascinating glimpse into the everyday lives of people in the Soviet Union, blending functionality with a touch of creativity. As we appreciate these unusual artifacts, we gain a deeper understanding of the resourcefulness that characterized a time when innovation was born out of necessity. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history, and we hope you found these accessories as intriguing as we do.